Hey everybody, I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and other leaders maximize their potential, build rock-solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. A wise man said, when businesses stop treating purpose as a tagline and start using it as a tool, growth doesn't just happen, it accelerates. Hint, you're about to meet that wise man. Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about putting purpose into motion, making growth the heart of your business, the think, do, say approach, and more. My guest is a husband to Christy and a father to Max and Ben. He's a massive baseball fan, an award-winning writer and creative director, best-selling author, and an in-demand speaker. He's written for TV, performed a hit play, launched a branded art gallery, was a touring stand-up comedian for 20 years, published an award-winning comedy book, and produced an award-winning comedy show. His list of clients includes top brands such as DoorDash, Microsoft, Walmart, and many others. Please welcome the founder and chief strategy officer of Church+State and the man who's challenging all of us to reimagine the strategic heart of our business and align it with our purpose, Ron Tite. Ron, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me, and hello, everybody out there.
Oh, yeah. I could listen to your voice for hours. I truly
I think
could.
if we put the two of our voices together, when we get into that radio zone, we could have, I just picture it being a radio show would be like, you're listening to The Storm here on Scherr Tite FM.
Ooh, that's good. All right, listeners, is that what you want to hear during this conversation? I will tell you a quick funny. So when my voice changed, of course, I haven't sounded like this my entire life, but when my voice did change and I really started to work on it, coach, and hone it to the best of my ability, I would have people that would come up and say, could you just read the yellow pages to me? That's all I want. Just read the yellow pages to me. It's so funny. So, first of all, I'm so glad that you're here today, and I have really enjoyed researching you and getting to know you, and now we actually get to do that face to face, so I'm super excited. So I thought maybe a good starting point for us, Ron, would be for you to share maybe a memorable or a profound experience from your life and how that experience has informed the work that you do today.
Well, I think life is kind of a series of experiences, or life is the thing that occurs in between those interesting experiences. Maybe that's another way to think about it. But there have been so many really cool that we all go through. We all go through these weird little things. My friend Jason Thompson just produced a play called Little Big Moments, where it's kind of the big moments in our lives seemingly are those tiny little things that happen. It's our kids coming up and giving us a hug, or it's an audience member who comes up and tells us that they've been following us for a while, or something that we said 10 years ago they still remember. Those kind of weird little moments. I think the thing that had a significant impact on my life was when I really decided to go and do stand-up comedy. That's not, there's no LinkedIn job that says, like, we're looking for 10 comedians to come down. It's not something you apply to. And so it was this weird combination of passion and intrigue and curiosity that drove me to this desire to just do it. I didn't do it because I wanted to become a touring comedian, or that I wanted to, sell out arenas, or have this successful career, launch into TV, or any of it. I just wanted to do it. And I wanted to see the method to the madness, and I was really curious about the process. And so I went to a friend and I said, hey, I want to be a stand-up. Like, what do I do? And I've been doing stuff at Second City, which is basically improv and sketch. But he said, well, you got to go down and just do an open mic night. Like, you have 5 minutes. And so I went down and I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to go check it out. And so I went down, I checked it out. And Jay, it was brutal. Like, that guy was drunk. That guy lost a bet. It was horrible. And I looked around. I'm like, I'm already better than everybody. I've never done it before. I'm not doing this. I'm not going to be associated with this. So I went back to that friend and I said, no, not for me. What other way? What else can I do to get started? And he said, well, I guess you could just, you could get to know a producer, see who's producing a live show, and see if you can convince them to put you on their show, even though you've never done it before. See if they'll put you on for 5 minutes. And I just said, well, why don't I just become a producer? Like, why don't I just produce my own show? And so that's what I did. I made myself the headliner. And the very first night of stand-up comedy ever in my life, I did a headlining set of 45 minutes.
Wow.
And it was the act of kind of going, no, I want to do something, and I'm not just gonna talk about it or follow it or watch content on. I'm gonna go and do it. I'm gonna commit to doing it. But then when I didn't like the way the establishment controlled that entry point for people, I said, screw it. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna do it on my own. And I took a very entrepreneurial approach to stand up. And everybody in the establishment said, you're crazy. That's not how it works. Nobody does 45 minutes on their first night. And I said, I don't know, I got 45 minutes of material. I think I'm going to do this. And so that act alone, regardless of everything that followed and all the learning and enjoyment and fulfillment that took place on all those years of stand-up after that very first night, planning for that very first night and having the courage to do that very first night, I think is something that has guided my decisions ever since.
That's an amazing story, and I give you a ton of credit. And I love the fact that you were courageous enough, to use that word, that you were courageous enough to find a way that allowed you to create something that met the intersection of the passion, the curiosity, all of it came together, and using that entrepreneurial spirit as a way to launch something that puts you right in the middle of all of this. So first, as you're telling me this story, where did your material come from? So that 45-minute set, what were you drawing upon?
That's a great question, because I think when we first start something, it started as just a simple expression of, I had something to say. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, a business perspective, it's like we all have those frustrations. We have those frustrations about products and about services and about the way business should be run. And we can sit and complain about them, or we can truly express ourselves and create a new product or create a new company to deal with it. So what I did was I had some things to say and some frustrations and some insights about growing up really poor. And I wanted to express that, of what that upbringing meant to me and how it manifested itself in who I was. And so it was almost as therapeutic as it was an expression of creativity, because I got to work through all of those things that I had a perspective on. And the interesting part about it is it's not enough to vent and have something to complain or reflect on, just like it's not enough to just kind of build a great product, that you need to make it interesting for other people. So in comedy, you need to find the funny and the pain. And in products and services, other people adopt your ideas depending how you communicate them. And so maybe it's not find the funny, but you got to find the relevance, or you got to find the value, or whatever it is that is going to connect with somebody to make them go like, oh, I understand what this person's going through, or I understand what this product delivers. So, that's what I did. I kind of logically went literally from birth, and tried to find the humor in all of those stages of my life.
So we're not going to do a 45-minute set here today, although I would love to see a recording of that if one exists. But I would love to hear part of your origin story. And in doing my research and my own due diligence, I do know that you came up from a bit of a challenging upbringing, certainly in terms of fatherhood and having a stable father figure or lack thereof.
Yeah.
So why don't you share with us a bit about your upbringing and how part of that shaped your perspectives on life today and your perspectives on being a father to your own two children?
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity.
Sure.
My parents got divorced very early. I was one when my dad left, and I've got three siblings. So I was the youngest. So I was only a year old when my dad departed, and that was a more kind of financially had more financial ramifications, I think, than anything. Where I was leaving a mom who was disabled, on social assistance with 4 kids. We called those the lean years. Those were, there's a reason hand-me-down clothes were the wardrobe of choice. Why I never got anything new. It was just hand-me-downs from siblings and cousins. And then eventually, got a stepdad, but who himself was not really an ideal person to be raising children. And so those were interesting times. Of course, I didn't know that at the time, right? You only know what you know. And then when you kind of get exposed to other cultures and other people and people from other socioeconomic groups and whatnot, you start to gain a real appreciation for the world and kind of the role or the place that you came from in it. And both in a good way and a bad way. I mean, both. I really came to appreciate what my mom went through, who was just a wonderful human being. And eventually, after being kind of angry or bitter about the kind of the lack of father, the lack of presence that my dad had in our lives, then eventually you kind of begin to realize, people are complicated. People are complicated. And all I can do is change the things that I can change, that I have control over. I didn't think I was ever going to be a dad. I think I'm married till I was 43. So, I'm now, I'll be 55, and I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. So I'm a granddaddy daddy. But the benefit of having that lack of a father presence is that now, oh man, I kiss my kids like it's to the point that at one point our 7-year-old said, "Why do you kiss us so much?" And I said, "Hey, look, I never got a kiss from my dad. My dad never got a kiss from my dad. And I just want you to be reminded just how much I love you." And so I think that has that experience has just made me more in tune with what I think I wish I got. And so now I can deliver it to my kids.
That's beautiful. What is something that you believed about yourself earlier in life that you found out later wasn't true?
Oh, that's good. I would say, this is so weird. I think that I was athletic. I did a phys ed degree. Like I was a wrestler. And growing up. So it wasn't that I wasn't athletic. It wasn't that wasn't true. But growing up, when the home isn't great, you turn to school. When you turn to school, I turned to sports and the camaraderie of my wrestling team and everything. And so I just naturally thought I'm a jock. I'm a phys ed type person. So I went off, and nobody in my family had been to university. So I went to my wrestling coach and I said, "What'd you do?" And he said, like, oh, I went to Queen's University and I did phys ed. I go, okay, I'll do that. And so I went off to do a phys ed degree. And then I discovered I was actually really creative, that I was a great writer. And I had no idea that that was a core part of who I was. I'd never explored it, or at least I didn't realize I had explored it when I had. And that was this weird discovery of, oh, I can do anything. You know, there's one of my favorite writers is John Irving. And John Irving, weirdly, lives around the corner. He lives close to me here in Toronto. And when John Irving went to college, John Irving was a wrestler, just like I was. And when John Irving went to college, he discovered this love of writing. And he had no idea that he had this love of writing. And he didn't think it was cool that jocks have a passion for writing. So he would actually say to his wrestling coach, I can't go to the meet or the tournament because I have to go see my girlfriend. Well, his girlfriend was his writing. And he wrote a great book called The Imaginary Girlfriend on his love of writing and his passion for writing, and how he used that imaginary girlfriend to excuse himself to go and practice and just work on his writing. And I read that book, The Imaginary Girlfriend, realized, oh, I don't have to do sports stuff. Like, I can actually pursue anything I want. I can actually be a writer. I can write if I want to. So here's where the story gets really nuts. Full story. Picture it. Sicily, 1946. No, picture it. I'm in Toronto. I'm at a restaurant. I'm at the restaurant with a friend of mine and the publisher of my second and third book, Jesse Finkelstein. Seated beside us is John Irving. I have never got to meet the man, see the man, anything. And here I am. I took his advice. I'm literally at dinner with the publisher of my second and third book. And I had to, I didn't want to bother. I was so stressed. I was like, oh, I don't want to bother him. I want a fan moment, all that. And he was with, who I presume was his wife and maybe his daughter. And I just turned to, as they were getting up to leave, and the daughter got up, and I said, is that John Irving? And she said, yeah, that's him. And I just said, I just really want to thank you. You inspired me. You showed me that I could do whatever I wanted, and I could be a writer, Imaginary Girlfriend, and this is the publisher of my second book. And it was just such an amazing first full circle moment. And he was gracious and lovely and everything. And what's even weirder now about that night is that the other friend who is there at that dinner, her name is Tracy Finkelstein, not related.
Okay.
To Jesse. Tracy is the head of the Toronto Public Library Foundation. And every year, that foundation puts on a massive black tie event, fundraiser, where they celebrate 10 authors whose books are coming out that year. It's a black tie event called Bibliobash. I am one of the featured authors at the Bibliobash this year, along with, wait for it, John Irving.
Amazing.
So, from those mean, humble streets of Oshawa, Ontario, to the Black Tie Bibliobash next week, John Irving played a really big role.
What a life. That is so good. That's such a great story. So, one piece of that I'd love to tug on a thread. When you were in college and you realized you found a love of writing and realized that you could do this, what was it, if you can think back, what was the moment? What were you working on? What was it specifically that flipped that switch that said to you, ooh, I like this. I can do this. I'm good at this. What was it?
There were two things. The first, this is going to be borderline rude, but remember, this is 1992, I think.
Okay.
Or maybe even, no, it was 91. there were a group of friends, male friends. You're in your college years, and the perception is that everybody is having just tons of sex in college, right? Like everybody is having sex all the time. And this group of male friends and I would always joke on who wasn't having sex. And instead of having an outward conversation about it, we would say, oh, I am a member of the celibacy club. And other people would say, like, oh, I'm not just a member, I'm the president of the celibacy club. And so my friend Nick and I sat down one night and we said, this thing just became this ongoing joke. And we said, we need to write a newsletter for the celibacy club. And Nick and I sat down and wrote, if this was an actual membership, what would the newsletter be of the celibacy club? Like, our thoughts are with our vice chair in his darkest hour, as he has gone to the dark side and engaged in sexual activity. It was just really funny. And, like the stand-up thing, like there was no reason to do it. There was nobody asked us to do it. We just wanted to do it to have fun with it. And that's when I thought, this is really, man, if we could just do this in life, that'd be great. And then I did a fourth year thesis. Again, I did a phys ed degree and I did a fourth year thesis. And I just remember, because it was such a long piece, that I found my voice. Like I found my writing voice in that. And the topic was dreadful. The topic was, wait for it, the psychological factors affecting the performance of referees, umpires, and judges.
Ooh,
that was my
deep.
But I wrote it, and my thesis advisor came back and said, your lit review, it wasn't original research, it was just a lit review. And he said, your research was impeccable, it was great, all the sources were fantastic, but you write like a journalist. And I thought that was such a massive compliment, because I'd consciously found this voice. And I didn't care that it wasn't in tune with the way academic journals were written. And I just thought, wow, I could actually, I could do that. I could write more.
Wow. That is really good. So, Nick, the celibacy club, I love this. These are such great stories.
We even designed a logo. And it was just like an oak tree. For whatever reason, I have no idea.
Solid as an oak. What can you? Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? That's so good. Right. So, how did you meet Christy?
This is crazy. So I was 41 at the time. I was executive creative director at Havas, a worldwide, an ad agency in Toronto. I had just resigned. I was like, I need to go out and do my own thing. I had just resigned, and I said, I'm going to go to Philadelphia and visit with some friends in Philadelphia. And there's a flight out of Toronto. There's like a small airline that operates out of the island, which is kind of like is it Gateway in Chicago? Like the small downtown airport, like that kind of thing. And so I took that into New Jersey and then drove into Philadelphia with another friend. And that whole weekend, we drank picklebacks. This drink called a pickleback, which is a shot of Jameson chased with pickle juice. Ooh. And then I'm make my way back to New Jersey to take this flight home on Porter. And I see this young woman in the lounge, and I thought, well, she is beautiful, and I hope she sits next to me. And then she did. And so she sat next to me. She sat next to me on the flight from Newark to Toronto. So that's only an hour and a bit flight. Like, I had to really dial up the charm. Like, that's not a cross-country flight. So we just began talking and realized that we both did the exact same program at the same school. But neither one of us were working in the field, and we were years apart. So we weren't there at the same time. I just threw out a name of like, oh, were you there when this person was there? And she said, yeah, she was in my class, and she's a very good friend of mine. And so I just sent that person a note afterwards saying, I met your friend, Christy. She seemed wonderful and very bright. And that was that. And then I got a little friend request from Christy, and we went on a dog date, and then got engaged a year later. So yeah, I've been on millions of air flights, but on that one, I sat beside the most important person in the world.
So give us 2 or 3 words, descriptive words, that you would use for Christy.
She is disciplined in behavior. Like, she's very focused and disciplined.
Okay.
I'm very right brain. She's very left brain. She's a science background. She has 2 master's degrees. She's absolutely brilliant. So she's focused. She is she has a talent for organization and process that I've never seen before. So she was the manager of Emerge at the largest hospital in downtown Toronto. And so when you're, if you and I deal with process, we're talking about, if you're going to save the Keynote file to a Dropbox folder, it's process, but it's fine. But in that world, if you don't follow process, people die. Like, people die. And so she's incredibly kind of disciplined. She's very process driven, but she is the most, I guess the word's respectful of the world around her. When she would talk about things at the hospital, and I'd say, well, coming from the private sector, well, why don't you just take an Uber or something? And she would often say, like, that is an irresponsible use of tax dollars. And just to have that broader perspective on the larger society and community that we're all a part of, and aligning those actions to be respectful of that community, I think says a lot about who she is.
So knowing what she does, where her career focus is, and the type of individual who she is, what does she think about the work that you do when it comes to organizations, purpose, and leadership from that perspective? What does she think about that? And then a second piece to that question, as you're writing, when you write books or write papers, does she edit your work?
I'll answer the second question first. No, she doesn't. I think because I like that process. I like that that's a separate process and something that I own completely, and it's because it's an artistic expression for me. So no, she and I would see that as an imposition. So I wouldn't ask her to do that. And then in terms of the work, I think it's a completely different world for her. And so on one level, she's so, no nonsense that there's always, well, you just like the solution it's right there, like just convince them to do that. I'm like, I know. That is the easy answer, but the getting people there is different. I think it's such a refreshing perspective from when somebody is dealing with life and death on a daily basis. And she's no longer working at St. Mike's, but that was where she was for many years. Try being a keynote speaker who complains about the fact that they didn't have the proper lav for you, and to tell your spouse that you're complaining that it was the microphone, and then have her say, and then what happened? Did you get on a stage and make a lot of money talking to people? Is that what happened? Yeah. Okay. So it puts it all into perspective.
Yes, it does.
To hear, I would complain about a client not buying a logo recommendation. And then she'd say, we had a jumper today. And a jumper is somebody who has died by suicide by jumping into the tracks of the subway. That is something that you and I will never, ever have to deal with on an emotional level. And it puts, not that all of our problems or venting aren't justified or valid, but it certainly puts it into perspective and helps illuminate how lucky we are to do what we do.
Absolutely. So interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to switch gears here for a bit. So you have your third book, The Purpose of Purpose, coming out. By the time this episode airs, that book will be out. And of course, we're going to provide links where all of our listeners can go out and purchase a copy of it, which we're going to
Liquidation sale.
Yeah, well, let's not start there. But I'd like to start with putting purpose into motion. So you talk a lot about businesses that use their purpose as a tagline, looks good on paper, looks good on a poster, but it's really putting your purpose into motion, being purposeful in your decisions and taking purposeful action that really is the difference maker. Speak to that for a moment or two and maybe tie that to an example of an organization that either you've worked with or just an organization that perhaps you highlight in your book that does that well. And how has that impacted that business?
So the reason, I'll start with, the first part is that organizations got purpose wrong. They just did. Often. They still do. They get purpose wrong. That when we came out of the pandemic and society was looking to business and blaming business for all the wrongs and injustices of the world, be it sustainability issues, be it equal rights or equality, all of those things. And we're like, it's business. It's business. Even the CEO McCain said the interests of society aren't necessarily aligned with the interests of business anymore. And so when all this hatred came out, then business leaders reacted by saying, no, we're caring people. We love the earth. We believe our purpose is in saving the planet. And it's like, but you make crackers. There was a complete disconnect between the purpose of the organization and where that organization often made their money. And they're completely out of whack. And there's a way to test it. If you say, like, we believe that blank, so we do this. So if you say, we believe that the earth is important, so we make crackers, that doesn't align. That to me says you're just out for PR. What purpose is the strategic heartbeat of your organization. It is strategically linked to where you make your money. And all those other things, equality, human rights, sustainability, that's not purpose. Those are expectations. I hope you're not killing the planet in doing the thing that you do. I hope that you fundamentally believe in equality and human rights. But saying that that's your purpose is a lot like saying our purpose is we believe in not murdering people. I hope you believe in not murdering people. That's not purpose. Purpose is the strategic soul of your business, the strategic heartbeat of your business. So with that in mind, it can't just be about what you sell either. That's what you do. And it's to use Simon Sinek's golden circle of like, well, why do you do the thing that you do? Why do you make your money in this way? What is your fundamental belief that is behind where you make your money? And so if you're Lego, do you believe that you should make toys that get embedded deep into shag rugs that people step on at 3 a.m? No, no, you believe that play inspires creativity. That's what you fundamentally believe, that play inspires creativity, and that what you do is you give kids the tools and the toys in order to play so that they can develop creative skills. So what you do is you make toys, but that's not what you believe. You fundamentally believe that play inspires creativity. And there's a million different decisions that you can make to reinforce that purpose. And building that toy, the one that we've seen, is one way. But there's a million different product extensions that we could think of that would reinforce that fundamental purpose for Lego. When you look at what the miraculous things that Barbie has done as a brand, you know, we believe that little girls can be anything and anyone. And so what do they do? Like, what does the doll do? Well, the doll now acts as inspiration for what that little girl can become and who she can be. And yes, you can make a doll. You can also make a movie that inspires young girls to grow into being someone that they aspire to be. So that, both of those cases, both of them weirdly are associated with children, but the same thing exists in any product that you and I that you and I consume.
So let's take the other side of that coin then. So those companies that today talk about purpose, but it's really more of the tagline, right? You kind of gave the analogy of a company that makes crackers, right? But let's take a company who today really could change and shift the way that they talk about purpose. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to draw a correlation between doing it well and not doing it well.
Right.
Because I want our audience to be able to visually as well as tactically and through sensory understand the difference between the two and
Sure.
not just think about purpose, being a tagline that's on a website, but let's give something tangible on what's not going well.
Yeah. So there are, if you look at in the FI space, in the financial services,
Okay.
when you look at what you could do, and we've done it. We did an audit of all the purpose statements of all the large financial institutions in North America. We did the exact same thing with post-secondary education. Go ahead, take a look at any tagline of any post-secondary education. What do they all say? We are creating a future. Oh, it's the exact same thing. Everybody, we believe in a future for all. And so the belief is a pithy statement that they think they should stand for, if you use the post-secondary college or university example. That we believe as an educational institution, we believe in creating a future that students can all have access to, or that students can become the people that they want to be in the future. It all sounds the same. And then you go, well, what are you doing to fundamentally change the delivery of education so that you can reinforce that? Nothing. They're teaching the same classes in the same way. They have the same tenured faculty with the exact same approach. And when you combat that or contradict that with, I don't know, Masterclass, who has a belief around accessibility of inspiration and information, and you're taking a brand that says, how are we reinforcing that? Well, you can take photography from Annie Leibovitz for $50 from your couch. Compare that educational program and experience with going in to take in the U.S. case, $100,000 or whatever the tuition is these days, $50,000 to go to listen to a tenured faculty member in the same lecture hall. They may not use slides anymore, but they probably use PowerPoint now. So some of the tools have changed, but it is the exact same approach to education. The tagline sounds great. The purpose sounds great. There are no actions to back it up.
That is a great example and a perfect way to articulate it. So thank you for that.
To the point that
So,
any college you want, there's a video with the president of the college in the grand foyer of the biggest building saying, "Here at XYZ College, we believe in creating the future."
I want to see the actions that back it up.
Yeah.
I love the example of masterclass. That's perfect. So, making growth the heart of our business. That really is the impetus, the focus of your latest book. It's as simple as that, but simple isn't always easy,
Right.
But it's as simple as that. Now, you tie your think, do, say framework or approach, which, by the way, for those that are watching and listening right now, that was the name of Ron's second book. We'll link to that one as well as in the show notes.
Thank you.
But you utilize that approach as part of making growth the heart of our business. So why don't we start here if we can, because you and I have not had a prior conversation in regards to that framework. So if you could distill that for us, that approach, just so we can wrap our head around that, and then maybe we could give an example of how that's actually put into practice to help a business to be able to focus growth on the heart of their business.
Yeah. So the think to say approach is really simple. It's really what do it basically can say that we are focused by a sense of purpose, that we will still be defined by the actions we take, and that our ideas will be adopted. Our ideas about what we believe and what we do will be adopted by other people, all depending on how we communicate it. So at the heart of growth is what you believe, what you do to reinforce it, and how you talk about it, or what you think, what you do, and what you say. And all three combined. And that can happen on a personal level as well as on an organizational level. So you can say, as an organization, we fundamentally believe that play inspires creativity. So we do these things. We make these decisions. We make these products. And then, how do we talk about it? Well, we should probably talk about it in a playful way. We need to talk about it in a way that is relevant enough and interesting enough and timely enough and fun enough and engaging enough that people want to stop and listen and adopt those ideas. On a personal level, it can be the same thing. As a leader, if you're a middle manager, your success as a leader should be tied to personal growth, not just organizational growth, but personal growth. So how do you grow as a person? Well, what do you fundamentally believe about being a middle manager? Do you believe that the best middle managers are mentors? Do you believe that the best middle managers are cost consultants? Do you believe that the best middle managers are the people who manage up and that's their role? Like, what do you fundamentally believe about your role as a middle manager? Secondly, what do you do to reinforce that? And how do you act with intention, and how do you do it on purpose to ensure that you are aligning your daily and weekly activities to reinforce this fundamental belief? Who are you mentoring? When are you mentoring them? How are you mentoring them? Are you taking mentoring courses? Are you getting your coaching certification? Like, how are you growing as a human being? And the last part, how are you talking about it inside your organization? Are you showing up and looking and acting and sounding like the stock photo version of what you think a mentoring middle manager is supposed to look and act and sound like? Because if you are, I'm not buying it. So how do you communicate this fundamental belief around mentoring so that people trust you and they listen to what you're saying? So that is really at the heart of it. And then when we look at the growth trajectory, the growth comes from prioritizing the actions that for us the greatest growth by reinforcing our fundamental beliefs. And so how do you come up with those actions? Well, do you do a customer journey map and you see like where is the thing that you fundamentally believe not being reinforced? If you believe that play inspires creativity, is your website playful? Is it a creative website? And all the way through from every kind of customer and employee touch point, And then it's just coming up with those 200 things and kind of going, okay, where are we going to get the biggest bang for a buck? Where are we going to see the best growth here? That is really the heart of it.
Beautiful. So when you're working with a new client, someone comes, they want to engage with you, and they want some help going through this process. From the time that you first engage with them, and you're sitting down, you're putting together the roadmap and coming up with all the different touch points and the information and so forth, what is the typical life cycle from the time that we begin working together to the time where we're starting to make changes within our organization based on the work that we're doing together? So we're living and breathing our purpose tied to growth every day, and it goes from top down, bottom up.
That depends on every organization. So what we get brought in to do a lot of is, can you do this front end strategy work where that's really the think and the do, right? And the think and the do, we don't just go, all right, what do you believe? Let's see. I don't know. You believe. Great. Like, no. It's a full deep dive. We do target analysis and category analysis and brand heritage analysis. We look at brand relevance and brand difference and brand opportunity. We create brand beliefs, all that work. Then we kind of go into the do section of, here's what you currently do, and here are the 25 things you could also do. And then we get into the how do we talk about it. And the how do we talk about it starts with do you have the right company name? Like, is this the right name you need to? Because if this is what you believe and this is what you do, knowing what we know about your target and your competition, this is the right name. So sometimes it starts there, and that a new name can take a year. I mean, if they're a board, are there stakeholders? I mean, are there people with lived experience? There's a ton of different stuff there. And from name, we get into kind of logo exploration and color palette exploration. Then we get into design systems, and then we get into campaigns. Now, not everybody needs that, So, one of our clients is Google. Google doesn't need us to rename their organization or to redesign their brand. Those standards are pretty tight. And so what we do is come in like, well, how do we talk about what Google fundamentally believes in a really specific area, given what we know now? So if it's that, hey, something has happened with the Online News Act, and how do we talk about and connect Google's fundamental beliefs as an organization to this changing dynamic of how we consume news? And so it's a really focused communication exercise. But even that, when we did that was 6-8 months of work. Before then it became like, okay, now we got to launch AI. Like, okay, now we're gonna do that. So it's all over the place, but typically we, a minimum of 6 months.
This is fascinating, truly fascinating. So where do you see yourself personally growing over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years? So when I ask that question, I'm asking you to think a little bit about your own gaps, right? Some of the areas where you feel that you can personally develop and grow with intention. So where do you see yourself growing over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think the think part, we've nailed it. The strategy, like that part is baked, and it always continues to evolve, but we nailed that. The say part, we nailed that. And where I think our biggest opportunity is, and where my mind goes, is how do we do a better job of aligning the actions of the people inside the organization? So that's why we're spending more time developing our capabilities in training and development. And because our roots are a traditional ad agency. But so we say, look, we're out there making all these promises about what you do. And if you haven't aligned developing your people inside to deliver on the promises you just spent all this money making, then it's going to all fall apart. It'll be a horrible experience. So I think that's an area that a lot of agencies have no desire to be in. But I think it's massively important, and I think it's a wonderful differentiator for the agency. And so I'm kind of, we're developing a course around Think to Say. We're developing customized training and development for clients, and we're delivering that. And so we're just in that, we're developing some of those programs. And so that practice, if you will continue to grow.
Beautiful. So, Ron, what are one or two bigger questions that you're contemplating today? This could be personal or business, but the bigger questions that you really think very deeply about.
I do think about the big picture stuff of the global economy and where that's shifting and how that gets played out. Everything from supply chain to trade agreements and all that kind of stuff. As you can imagine, being in Canada, it's something that's maybe a little bit closer to home, where we're looking around, kind of going, "What's happening here?" But I think that's not a criticism in any way or anything. That's not a vent either. That's hey, we all need a little kick in the butt every once in a while to remind ourselves to continue growing into new areas, not just growing financially, but growing with new systems and new processes and new relationships and new agreements and all those sorts of things. But I think that big picture thing has a chance to fundamentally rewrite in some way how business gets done. So that's one. Secondly, the evolving workspace and how we can best serve the needs of people in society and serve the needs of business. I think in some ways we went too far in one direction. And my theme for 2025 was, let's get back to business. Like, let's get back to business. Like, let's go. Enough conversations. We should be on most of this stuff. Let's get back to business. And that new workplace, like, what does that look like? And then the third part is how do we get back to the basics of it? That I think we've spiraled out with, certainly from a marketing perspective, of the adoption of AI and new platforms like TikTok and Blue Sky, and we just keep adding on layers of things, and people are very tactically driven. And I think we're gonna see, hopefully, this return to like, no. Let's get back to some foundational work, and let's do that work first, instead of just moving on to the next thing. The next big thing is already the last big thing. So that speed around change, I hope changes and we get back into foundational work.
I'm right there with you from your lips.
Yeah.
So, as we're wrapping up our conversation today, I could speak with you for another 2 hours.
Likewise.
I love listening to you. Thank you for the conversation. But as we are wrapping up, I've got one final question and then an ask.
Sure.
So here's my question for you. If you had the opportunity to sit on a park bench with any one person who's either living or no longer with us, and you could ask that person one question and one question only. First, who is the person that you would want to sit down with? And then secondly, what is the one question that you would ask?
I think I would want to sit down with my mom.
Okay.
And I'd want to ask her how she did it. I think, here's a woman who was disabled. She wasn't supposed to live past 6. She had spina bifida. She had 4 kids, spent, years on social assistance. And I have 2 kids. Money is not a problem. And yes, raising kids today is different than those days. But I want to know how she did it and how she stayed sane and how she stayed happy. I would just love to get her perspective on stuff. She never met my wife. My mom passed away before I met my wife, so she never got to meet my wife. She never got to meet my kids. And man, if she could just get a little window into that world, I know she'd be tickled pink. But yeah, that's what I would ask her.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And here is my ask. I would love it if you would give all of us, including me, one challenge. What is something that you would challenge us to do starting immediately?
I would say the challenge is you're currently doing one thing. I think a lot of people have explored purpose and why they do what they do and all that. And so I'd say, okay, and now you do your thing. You do your thing to reinforce that. What's one other thing that you could do? What's one other thing? Not some random thing. You know, those people are like, I throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and we see what sticks. Like, no. On purpose. What is the one other thing that you could do which could complement what you currently do? Call it alternative revenue or additional revenue streams or additional content. What is the other thing you're not doing that could also reinforce the purpose and the things you believe?
I love it. And for all of you that are watching and listening right now, I truly hope that you are saying out loud, challenge accepted. That is so good, Ron. I want to thank you so very much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. What a fantastic conversation. I really do appreciate your thoughtful approach, your humor, your humanity, and your ability to not only tell stories, but just your true authenticity. And I know that word is overused, but in this particular case, it's coming from the heart, and I'm grateful for you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Jay. We started when I said, man, I'd love to hear some questions I've never heard before, and like pretty much every single one of them. So you're very good at what you do. Thank you for doing this, and thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. And for all of you, I want to thank you so very much for watching and for listening. And I do have a quick favor. Would you please take just a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? Let us know what you thought about this particular episode with Ron. Maybe even share one key takeaway. And when you do that, I promise you this, I'm going to share it with Ron so he knows that you were engaged, that you were listening. And who knows, maybe he'll respond to you. And to listen to more podcasts, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click that podcast button. And my friends, until next time, keep learning, keep growing. Make sure that you run out to pick up a copy of The Purpose of Purpose. And do yourself a favor, apply the lessons you learn. That is how you take action and put it into practice. And we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.